Hey everyone, and welcome. If you've ever thought about starting a business, you know the dream, right? But let's be real, it is one thing to sell a cool product, but it's a completely different ballgame to actually make money doing it. So today, we're going to break it all down. We are doing a deep dive into cost analysis, which is basically the essential toolkit you need to make smarter and, more profitable decisions. All right, so here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to talk about why this stuff even matters. Then we'll get into the lingo, the language of cost, before we unpack the difference between fixed and variable costs. After that, we'll zoom in on what it costs to make a single item. Then we'll find that magic number, your break-even point. And we'll wrap it all up by thinking about the real cost behind every single decision you make. So why are we here? Well, because every single founder runs into this exact problem. You can have a line of customers around the block, you can have cash flowing in, but that doesn't automatically mean you're profitable. Nope. Understanding your costs is the only way to know for sure if you're building a business that's going to last or if you're just, spinning your wheels. Okay, to make this super clear and not just a bunch of theory, we're going to use a simple example the whole way through, a coffee cart. And by the time we're done, we're going to have a solid answer to one critical question. How many cups of coffee does this cart need to sell every single day just to pay the bills? Let's keep that question right in the front of our minds. So, before we can even touch that coffee cart question, we got to learn to speak the language. And the first rule of cost analysis is simple, but it is so important. Not all costs are created equal, not by a long shot. I mean, think about it. When you buy a bag of coffee beans or pay rent for your spot, that's obviously a cost, right? But is that the whole picture? Is the money literally leaving your bank account the only thing you should be worried about? The answer? Well, it's a huge no. And that brings us to this really crucial difference. On one hand, you have your explicit costs. These are the obvious ones, the cash you're actually paying for things like rent, supplies, wages. But then you've got the tricky ones, implicit costs. You might know them as opportunity costs. This is the value of whatever you're giving up. For our coffee cart owner, it's that nice, steady salary they could be making if they weren't running the cart. It's not cash out of their pocket, but believe me, it is a very, very real cost of doing business. Okay, let's quickly add 3 more words to our vocabulary. First, marginal cost. That's just the little bit of extra cost to make one more cup of coffee. Incremental cost is thinking bigger. It's the total extra cost if you decide to, say, add a second coffee cart. And then there's sunk cost. Now listen up, because this one's a biggie. This is money you've already spent and you can't get back. It's gone. The most important thing to remember is that you have to completely ignore sunk cost when you're making decisions about the future. That money's already sailed. Awesome. Now that we've got the lingo down, let's look at how costs actually behave out in the wild. And a good way to think about it is that your expenses kind of have 2 different personalities. One is super steady and predictable, and the other, well, it changes all the time. First up, you've got your total fixed costs. These are your ride or die expenses, right? You have to pay them no matter what. It doesn't matter if you sell 0 cups of coffee or 1,000, you still gotta pay the rent for your cart, your permits, maybe even a base salary for yourself. They stay the same, they are fixed. And on the other side of the coin, you have total variable costs. Now, these guys are directly tied to how much you're selling. The more coffee you make, the more you spend on beans, milk, sugar, cups. If you have a slow day, these costs go down. They basically move in perfect sync with your sales. And all of this leads to one simple, but honestly super powerful equation. Your total cost of doing business is just your fixed costs plus your variable costs. That's it. This little formula gives you the complete picture of what it costs to open up shop every single day. Okay, so understanding your total costs is step 1. But where the magic really happens is when we zoom in and break it down to see what's happening on a per unit basis, or for us, a per cup basis. So let's get into the numbers. Now, before I throw a big table of numbers at you, I want you to focus on just one number, 1,500. Just lock that number in your brain for a second. As you're about to see, this represents the marginal cost, the specific cost of making just one more item at a particular point in time. It's the perfect example of how the cost to make each new thing isn't always the same. Now, let's see where it fits. Okay, here it is. I know this can look like a lot, but I promise it tells a really clear story. First, look at that TFC column on the left. See how it's just stuck at 6,000 no matter what? That's your fixed cost. But look how the variable and total costs climb as you produce more. Now shift your eyes to the right. This is where we see the per unit costs. And all the way at the end, there's MC, marginal cost. And look, there's our number, 1,500. That's exactly how much extra it costs to go from making 2 units to making 3. Now, the real key here is not to memorize all these numbers. It's about spotting the patterns. First, as we said, total fixed cost is a flat line. It's constant. Second, look at average fixed cost. It always goes down the more you make. Just think about it. You're spreading that daily rent over more and more cups of coffee, so each cup bears less of the burden. And finally, and this is a huge one, notice how the other per unit costs are U-shaped. They fall at first as you get more efficient, but then eventually they start to climb again. This U-shape happens in almost every business. All right, this is the moment we've been building towards. This is the payoff. We've learned the language, we've looked at the data, so now let's put it all to work and finally answer that question about our coffee cart. Let's find the ultimate decision-making tool. And that tool is called break-even analysis. It's a surprisingly simple way to find the exact number of sales you need to cover every single one of your costs. It's that sweet spot where your total revenue exactly equals your total costs. You're not making a profit yet, but hey, you're not losing money anymore either. And this is the magic formula that gets you there. Your break-even point is just your total fixed costs divided by your price per unit minus your variable cost per unit. Now that little bit in the parentheses, that's your secret weapon. It's called your contribution margin. It's the amount of cash each sale contributes towards paying off those big fixed costs. Okay, let's do this. Let's plug in the numbers for our coffee cart step by step. Step 1, our daily fixed costs for rent and stuff are $100. Step 2, we're selling each cup of coffee for $4, and the variable costs, the cup, the beans, the milk, are $1.50. Step 3, we slot it into our formula, so that's 100 divided by $4 minus $1.50. And step 4, we do the math. And boom! There it is. You need to sell exactly 40 cups of coffee every single day just to break even. Cup number 41, that's your first taste of actual profit. So what's the big takeaway from all this? I mean, calculating your break-even point is huge, for sure, but really understanding the nature of all your costs, the ones you see and the ones you don't, that's what gives you true control over where your business is headed. Which brings us right back to where we started. We began by separating the costs you can see from the ones you can't. You now have the tools you need to calculate all the explicit, fixed, and variable costs in your business. So the real question, the one I want to leave you with, is this. What are the unseen, implicit opportunity costs that are quietly shaping your next big move? Because answering that, well, that's what separates good accounting from truly great strategy.